It was a quiet, foggy night in my small town. My name is Character Name, and I've lived here my entire life. Nothing much happens around here until recently. Strange things have been occurring, things that no one can explain. People whisper about shadows that move on their own, eerie sounds in the dead of night, and a feeling that something or someone is always watching. I never believed in such tales, but tonight, everything is about to change. As I walk down the dimly lit street, the silence is almost deafening, and a sense of unease settles in my chest. That's when I see it, the old abandoned house at the end of the road. Its windows dark, but somehow, it feels like it's staring back at me. Before we dive deeper into this chilling story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. As I stood there, staring at the old house, a sudden chill ran down my spine. The air around me felt heavier, colder. Just as I was about to turn away, I saw it. A shadow moving swiftly across one of the windows. But it wasn't just any shadow. It moved with purpose, as if it knew I was watching. My heart started pounding in my chest. Was someone inside? No one had lived there for years. Gathering my courage, I took a step closer, trying to get a better look. The house seemed to loom larger in the darkness, its decaying walls almost whispering secrets. Just then, a low creaking sound echoed from within. I froze. Something, or someone, was definitely inside. But what? Or who? The next day, I couldn't shake off the eerie feeling from the night before. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but strange things started happening. As I walked past the old house again, I heard faint whispers, as if the wind carried voices from within. Later that evening, my friends warned me about the house. They spoke of its dark history, tales of people who entered and were never the same. I laughed it off, pretending I wasn't affected. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. That night, as I lay in bed, the strange sounds continued. A soft tapping at my window, the creak of floorboards, things that shouldn't be happening. It felt like the house was calling me back, and somehow I knew I couldn't ignore it for long. That night, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. The whispers, the tapping, the shadow. It was all too much. I had to know what was going on. Grabbing a flashlight, I headed back to the old house. The streets were eerily quiet, and the only sound was the crunch of my footsteps on the gravel. As I approached the house, my heart raced. The front door, once firmly shut, now stood slightly ajar, creaking softly in the wind. I hesitated for a moment, then pushed it open. The inside was just as I imagined, dusty, cobwebbed, and filled with an overwhelming sense of dread. I stepped inside, the floorboards groaning beneath my weight. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and the darkness seemed to press in from all sides. Suddenly, I heard it again, the faint whispering, but this time it was clearer, closer. Following the sound, I made my way down a narrow hallway. At the end of the hall, a door slowly creaked open on its own. My flashlight flickered as I stepped inside the room. It was cold, unnaturally so. In the center of the room stood an old, cracked mirror. As I approached, I felt an overwhelming sense of being watched. Then, in the reflection, I saw it. The shadow, standing right behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. The room was empty. My breathing was ragged, my hands trembling. This wasn't my imagination. Something was here, and it wasn't going to let me leave easily. I stood there, frozen, staring into the empty room. The shadow I saw in the mirror, it couldn't have just disappeared. Gathering my courage, I turned back to the mirror, hoping for some explanation. That's when I noticed something strange. The reflection wasn't mimicking my movements. The figure in the mirror was still there, staring back at me with hollow eyes. Its shape slowly began to shift, and I realized with horror that it wasn't just a shadow. It was a part of me. Memories I had long buried began to resurface. Mistakes, regrets, and moments of darkness from my past, all reflected back at me. The whispers grew louder, filling the room with a cacophony of voices. They weren't random. They were my own thoughts, my own fears. The shadow was a manifestation of everything I had tried to forget. Every wrong decision, every hurt I had caused. As the realization dawned on me, the shadow spoke in a voice that was eerily familiar, my own. "You can't run from your past," it whispered. "It's a part of you." The room seemed to close in around me, and for a moment, I felt like I was suffocating. But then, something changed. I took a deep breath, facing the shadow head on. "I won't run anymore," I said firmly. The shadow seemed to waver, its form flickering like a dying flame. Slowly, the whispers faded, and the room grew still. I had confronted my fears, and for the first time, I felt a strange sense of peace. With the shadow gone, the house fell into an eerie silence. I stood there for a moment, letting the reality of what had just happened sink in. The weight on my chest lifted, and I felt a sense of relief. I had faced my fears, and though the memories still lingered, they no longer held power over me. I slowly made my way out of the house, stepping back into the cool night air. The streets were quiet, the town seemingly unaware of the battle I had just fought. As I walked home, I realized something important. Sometimes the darkest shadows we face are the ones within ourselves. But just as I reached my front door, I caught a glimpse of something in the distance, a familiar shadow standing under the streetlight, watching. It vanished in an instant, leaving me with one final thought. Some shadows never truly disappear. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more chilling tales. Until next time, stay in the light.